This is my floating shelf with a lift system for easy plant watering. Stay tuned for a demo. I remodeled my entire living room a while ago. It was a lot of work. If you missed the video, it's in the description. I love plants and already have them everywhere. In the video, I showed how I placed tall plants and watered them using an OPA system I invented. The truth is it didn't work. The plants looked bad because I rarely watered them. For that, I wanted to put up a tall shelf, but it had to be able to go up and down so I could water and do everything. First, I made a very basic plan. The idea was to have 3 rows of shelves staggered between each other, since I wanted to base it on a design I saw on Pinterest that I really liked. I also came up with the system that would raise and lower them. The idea was to move everything up and down using a winch or a hoist, and to optimize the force to use a pulley system. In this diagram, you can clearly see how the system works. It has 2 pulleys that provide the force. One is attached to the corner of a main wooden beam, and the other is where the hoist applies the force. One downside is that I wanted to put it exactly where I tore down the wall, dividing the 2 rooms. And since I put a metal beam in the middle, we had finished the wall with plaster so it would look better. So we couldn't hang the pulleys from the ceiling, which would have been ideal. That's why I bought 2 metal brackets and screwed them into both columns. I used 2 brackets on each side to make it stronger, and I figured that would hold up a lot. After all, I'm not planning to put much weight on the shelves. I wanted to install a main beam where I could later hang all the shelves from there. I used a 2x6-inch beam for that. I cut it because it was pretty big, and on each corner I put 2 hooks so I could later attach the pulleys there. In total, I used 7 pulleys, and to hang them, I used a 4mm rubber-coated steel cable to hold the pulleys. I simply slid the brackets onto a threaded rod and placed them on top of the bracket, secured them first with a zip tie while testing, and then just welded them. Honestly, it was pretty hard to film how I was running the cables because everything kept getting tangled, and it became impossible to understand. But in the diagram, you can clearly see the paths. But of course, to lift all of this, we need a motor with enough power. In this case, I bought a winch or hoist rated for 125 kilos. It may not seem like much, but with 2 pulleys in our design, each reduces the force we need to apply. Our winch could lift more than 300 kilos, and let's remember that it's a shelf. We won't hang a car or anything heavy from there. Since it was where the old wall stood, I screwed the winch to the floor, using 4 screws and concrete anchors, making it very solid. Installing the shelves is actually very simple. I drilled a hole in the beam and ran a cable through the center. Then in each board, I made a hole in each corner where the cable went through again, and I secured it. Using these clamps, which are specifically for tying this type of cable, you really just have to make sure the first shelf is nice and straight, because putting up the rest is a piece of cake. You just mark with a measuring tape, 30-something centimeters or whatever distance you want. We mark the spot with a marker, put the clamp on, and we're done. Each one will be perfectly symmetrical with the first. So it's just a matter of putting each one in place and adjusting it, making sure they're straight, and that's it. I used a level for this. I first installed 3 columns of shelves, but after finishing, I thought it looked overwhelming, so I removed the last column. I tested it with a plant, and it seemed promising. Now I just need to add a finishing touch. I started varnishing the shelves, but I was so unlucky that I dropped the whole can and ended up making a mess. But well, there was no shortage of laughs. And to finish, I added several new plants, some decorations, and a few other things. I don't have much to add yet, but I'll gradually fill it in. That's how it works. Using the original malachite command, we can raise and lower it as we like. Also, it has an automatic stopper so it doesn't go up more than it should. That's the red disc on the cable. The control is simple with just up and down buttons. I recently updated my living room with new lamps, including a smiley one I love, and another I made from a ceiling light I found at the Salvation Army. There's a tutorial reel on my Instagram if you're interested. Also, small touches like an armchair, a record player with decorative records, and several pictures. I love how it turned out. I'm starting without a remote control since I don't think it's needed. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.